Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson. We're continuing our study of the Gospel of Mark by starting chapter 7. We ended chapter 6 after Jesus had walked on the water, gone to the other side to see what it was like as Jesus preached in the villages and towns of Galilee, and how hectic it was and how much he was doing every day in terms of teaching and healing. So that celebrity has already been met with resistance in a variety of ways by his own family and by the religious establishment. We're going to have more of that now in chapter 7, and I'm going to read verses 1 through 13. The Pharisees and some of the scribes gathered together around him when they had come from Jerusalem. So these are the heavy hitters. These are the people from Jerusalem, and they surround him. So, you know, this is a circular firing squad that they've set up. And they had seen that some of his disciples were eating their bread with impure hands, that is, unwashed. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they carefully wash their hands, thus observing the traditions of the elders. And when they come from the marketplace, you do not eat unless they cleanse themselves. And there are many other things which they have received in order to observe, such as the washing of cups and pitchers and pots. And the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, "Why do your disciples not walk according to the traditions of the elders," not the word of God, mind you, "but eat bread with impure hands?" And he said to them, "Rightly did Isaiah prophesy of you, hypocrites, as it is written, 'This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrine the precepts of men. Neglecting the commandment of God, you hold to the tradition of men.'" He was also saying to them, "You nicely set aside the commandment of God in order to keep your tradition. Moses said, 'Honor your father and your mother, and he who speaks evil of father and mother, let him be put to death,'" according to the 10 Commandments, and then those chapters after Exodus chapter 20 that expand and explain Exodus chapter 20, right? Going straight to the primary source, the 10 Commandments and the law of Moses. And he's saying, "But you say, if a man says to his father or mother, 'Anything of mine you might have that you might have been helped by is korban,' that is to say, given to God, you no longer permit him to do anything for his father and mother, thus invalidating the word of God by your tradition, which you have handed down, and you do so many things like that." And we'll pick up there next time, because he's going to apply this to all of us next time. There's so much to see here. So the Pharisees, before they would do anything, like before they would eat, they would wash their hands. Now, that's not taking 60 seconds, with the ivory soap and, or the antibacterial soap under the faucet. Okay, they didn't have running water. What they would have was 2 vials of water, decanters of water, and they would, and these would both be clean. And with one hand, they take one, and they would pour it, starting with the tip of the fingers, the water down, so that it could wash all the defilement away. Okay, you can't use that now because it's been touched by an unclean hand. So with your clean hand, then you take the other one and pour it down. Now your hands are clean. Now you can eat. And that's what they would do. And the apostles are eating without going through that ritual. Not that their hands were necessarily dirty, but they knew this ritual. And the Pharisees are quite honest. Why aren't they obeying the traditions that we've handed down from the elders? And Jesus, instead of arguing that they're not breaking in any way the cleanliness laws, instead of litigating this, points out the singular flaw in what they just said. It's almost like he's saying, did you listen to yourselves? Your traditions cause you to break the law. And I'll give you an example. Jesus says, your traditions say that you can neglect the care of your elderly parents by saying, I don't have the funds to take care of you because I've dedicated all my stuff when I die to the temple. So it's Corban, it's dedicated. Therefore, if I take this money to help you, I'm taking money away from God. And he says, you are not honoring your father and your mother. You're doing the things that are death penalty vices in the law of Moses. Now that's what you're doing. That's the very argument Jesus ought to make. And that's a huge lesson that we need to learn. There's a bigger lesson that he's going to teach us next time. But in terms of dealing with people who are absolutely wrong and want to argue about it, the worst thing we can do is to argue with them in the way they want us to. For instance, we might be arguing with a Roman Catholic about the Pope speaking ex cathedra or something, and we want to, just make a real case out of it and have a 40-page brief as to why that's wrong. But it's not it's about authority. Who has authority, the Word or the man? It's that simple. And we have to keep it that simple, because truth that's necessary for our salvation is communicated that simply. And Jesus points this out quite simply. Listen, people, you're taking your traditions and you're using them to break the law of Moses, to break the Ten Commandments. And this is how you're doing it. And it was that simple. And there's no argument with this. There's no refuting this, because Jesus didn't join debate club. He just pointed out the obvious by stating the scriptures and applying them with common sense. That's a huge lesson for us to learn. But there's an even bigger one that we'll talk about next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes.